Okay, good afternoon to everyone listening. It is my pleasure to introduce Goonj, the podcast of Whistling Woods School of Media and Communication. If you haven't heard our previous shows, you should definitely visit the Whistling Woods blog, which is whistleandechoes.com, and check out our fictional audio plays that we have up there. Today we will specifically be talking about music, and more specifically the evolving music performance and live music scene in India. And joining me today are Abbas Jain and Anandita Chandra, sorry, my bad, who are students of the second year of our media and communication program, and keen music fans themselves. But our special guest is Mr. Brian Tellis. Brian, of course, has done many things over a long and storied career in many different fields, but his passion for music is something that he's very well known for. From being the RJ on the radio that we all came to listen to being jury on the Channel V Music Awards, it is his curation of the Mahindra Blues Festival, I think, that is a niche but hugely successful music festival that makes me most want to hear from him about this particular subject. So, with those introductions, let me first thank you all for being here, and quickly, to just break the ice, I'd like you all to talk about that album, that song, perhaps that artist that got you hooked on to music. Now, I know we're all some sort of different generations, so this might be a very eclectic mix, but for you, Brian, what was that sort of one sound that got you hooked on to music?
Okay, so I grew up in a family where music was enjoyed and indulged in, especially my mother. So she'd play songs of her or artists of her choice, the likes of Nat King Cole and Frank Sinatra and nice. Jim Reeves and a whole host. Those were the days of Saturday Date on All India Radio at 10 p.m. and I'd be exposed to that as well. But those were early days. I was not even into my teens. I think one of the pivotal moments, it doesn't belong to any one artist, maybe it does to an album, was the Woodstock Festival that happened back in '69. Like I said, I was this really young kid, but it left a lasting impression on me. And there are a fair few artists there that I then grew to enjoy and listen to over and over again. But that festival really kind of stuck the needle into my vein, so to speak. And I haven't been able to get rid of it since.
Absolutely, that's the way that it should be. Yeah. What about you, Anandita?
So for my generation, English music came through Akon and Enrique. So those are the people who bought in English music, and it sort of boomed from there. Now it's huge. It's probably bigger than Bollywood as well.
Okay, all right, and Abbas?
So even before I started listening to English music, I remember that when I was young, my family, we used to go to watch like 2 films every week. So, and when I started getting my pocket money, I used to save up to make it a sum of ₹50 and go get a cassette because we had a cassette player at home. So that is one of my earliest memories, that saving up those ₹50 to buy that cassette and listening to music.
And me, on the other hand, I'm definitely an 80s music junkie. So Duran were my drug of choice at that point, and Simon Le Bon was absolutely a hero. So some interesting stuff there. But now let's come on and talk about the music scene in India. I'll come to Brian first, because obviously this is something that you've been involved in deeply for a long period of time. Can you quickly sort of chart where the music scene, and I'm talking about live and performing music scene in India, where it's sort of come from, in its infancy, maybe 20, 25 years ago, and where we've got to today? Because there are a fair few festivals happening now. Yeah.
Certainly. So I can remember back in the day, again, when I was really young, there was, soon after Woodstock, was a festival called Mullaly Festival that happened in a place called Mullaly, pretty close to Pune. That was the first free-spirited, for lack of another way to say it, festival that happened here. Then, of course, there was Wild Acres in the late 70s that happened in Borivali on a farm, on a lake. These were early experiences of festivals where, Indian bands, pretty iconic at that time, Atomic Forest and Savage Encounter, Waterfront. These were, the famous bands of that time, rock and classic rock. And then, of course, more recently, I say about 15 years ago, there were festivals that took shape. The early days being the Smirnoff Festival, the EDM festival that happened, where the likes of Paul Van Dyke and came in. Beyond that, I think it really opened up. We as a company did a few festivals, the One Tree Music Festival, and we seeded the Mahindra Blues Festival 10 years ago. But importantly, large format festivals like Sunburn, took root. And there are many more as we speak, NH7, and the likes.
Yeah.
I think we are at a really interesting time when festivals are being promoted for right reasons. It's not just about the music that plays there, but it's about community building. And I think over the next 8 to 10 years, we're going to see a surfeit of festivals that will cater to every kind of mindset, is my belief.
Good. I mean, that's what I think as well. I completely agree with that. And Abbas, I mean, as someone who attends a lot of these festivals and a lot of these shows, where do you think in the last sort of 5 years these festivals really improved in terms of matching sort of international standards? Because we've got a number of festivals now that I would say are on that standard.
So back in school, once I remember when the EDM concerts started happening, they used to be really overpriced. But I feel that in the past 5 years, once people have started showing more interest and attending all of these festivals, I feel they are fairly priced. The organization of the festivals have become very smoother, like the event grounds and everything. And recently, in fact, we were lucky to attend Brian Adams' concert when he was in Mumbai. So it was really fascinating to see people who are maybe of your age enjoy more than us at the grounds. So I like how India is becoming a prominent it is out there on the map for all the performers to come here and perform, and the variety of performers that we have in India now.
Sure.
So
then, and Anandita, I mean, do you feel now that you get enough opportunity in terms of different styles of music to go and see bands that perhaps are playing not just a certain type of music, but they're playing different kinds of styles? Do you feel that we've come a long way in terms of the variation?
No, we have come a long way, but I think there's a long way to go as well. So there was a Global Citizen Festival, but they all called it the Coldplay Festival because I mean they didn't care about A.R. Rahman being there or Jay-Z being there or even Demi Lovato being there. And the audiences kept reacting differently. So you would react different. I mean, for Demi Lovato, people elder than me, they just sat down. I mean, they were disrespectful. And the people who were younger than me, they sat down for A.R. Rahman. So it's not, you really can't go to a festival expecting your kind of music. People just go now because you get tickets. I mean, it's become a niche now. So people who go to concerts are cool. So you don't go for the artist sometimes. The festival is bigger than the artist sometimes. So yeah, we have a long way to go for that as well.
So do you think, Brian, I mean, in terms of what Anandita is saying, I mean, do you think that we need better curation perhaps for some of these festivals?
Yes, I think there was an age when one was trying to cater to too many mindsets, too many sensibilities, too many demographics. I think what she said makes perfect sense. I think the separation is already happening. If you look around, you've got an independent music festival in NH7. You've got, Supersonic and Sunburn for the EDM and the people who like that. You've got the Blues Festival for jazz and blues lovers. So I think there's a curation happening, by itself. I also like to believe that there is a bit of a sharing of sensibilities now. So someone who's not really in their teens or early 20s would still go to a Supersonic or a Sunburn to catch the vibe.
yes.
I can remember the early NH7 festivals where there was only a certain type or age group that went, but that's kind of grown now. Now, we talk about the Mahindra Blues Festival, for instance, now. What I firmly believe in is that, and you said it, Anandita, that you need to go for more than just the festival. People go to the North Sea Jazz Festival. They don't necessarily go to hear a certain artist or a certain couple of artists. So I do believe that we need to evolve to a stage where people go to experience a certain vibe, albeit aimed at a certain target audience demographically or psychographically. But they need to soak in the experience first. And yes, it's also important that I did see Chris Martin of Coldplay, or I did see Demi Lovato or Jay-Z or whoever else it is. So I think the canvas needs to be a lot broader and wider than it is at the moment, keeping in mind a certain like I said, demographic or psychographic.
So, I mean, on that point, and you've mentioned this word a couple of times when you talk about this idea of community and community building at festivals. And if we are to accept that one of the driving sort of interests in going to a festival is to build this community. I mean, I know people that go to the same sort of festivals every year, and one of the reasons that they go is because they meet similar people again and again every year, and they've made firm friendships over the number of years that they've been going. How do we now translate this idea of community? Because, I mean, Anandita talks about this fact that, the Citizens Festival was pushed as the Coldplay Festival, and a lot of that's a lot to do with brands, and Coldplay are front and center, and okay, we can sell Coldplay tickets. How do we get this idea of community and bring that more front and center and get brands to buy into it?
That's a really interesting question. So brands will buy into community. They won't buy necessarily into a Coldplay. Because can you imagine at the end of a Coldplay concert, and I love Chris Martin, I love the band, but can you imagine the brand that's put huge amounts of money not being remembered as much as Chris Martin or Coldplay was? True, it doesn't work from regular marketing instinct, right? Now, the point I'll cut to the positive. How does one do it? I can give you the example of the Mahindra Blues Festival. It's become less important who plays at the Mahindra Blues Festival. It's become a lot more important about what I can do at the Mahindra Blues Festival. And you, Rahul, mentioned about hanging with the right kind of pack. Sure. When I say right, in my perspective, right? I mean, the kind of people I like hanging out with. Also, what we've added is a kind of a CSR angle to it, where we're going green, okay? And there are massive initiatives within the festival and its community that's going green. 2, 3 is we pay as much attention to the food and the surroundings as we do the artists. So the artists don't necessarily dominate the experience. Yes, they are a pivot, but it's also about I can hang out in the square at Mehboob Studio and I can indulge in some great food. I can have a drink or two. So it's a great place to hang out, right? I think a festival has great life even outside of the immediate 2 or 3 or 5 days.
Yeah.
What do I mean? I mean, again, I'm sorry I'm dwelling on the Mahindra Blues, but it has a radio program that runs through the year. It has the largest active live community digitally in the world. We actually, like I said, take Cold to Newcastle. We do a small version, twice a year in Chicago of the Mahindra Blues Festival. Talk about taking Cold to Newcastle.
Sure.
So these are things that one needs to do to grow the experience, to grow the festival, and importantly, to grow the objectivity behind the festival. We need to be clear about what the objectives of these festivals are and grow on that.
So coming to that, and that's a very interesting point and a very interesting idea in the sense that almost the wider community, the city as a wider community, begins to embrace the festival, and you have opportunities outside of the main festival to sort of again promote and build awareness of this festival. So do you think there's scope in a city like Bombay, which is we're a fairly musical city. We like our live performances here. Do you think there's a Mami style music festival that is possible in Bombay, and not one location, maybe multiple locations, to do it? Do you think that the infrastructure is there and the will is there to do something like that?
Right. So I must start off by saying that by way of infrastructure, there's always the can do a lot better. But being the half full person who focuses on the half full rather than the half empty, I think there is immense possibilities in this city. To draw an analogy, how about the theatre festival that happens in Europe, right?
Yeah.
We know about that, the Fringe, Edinburgh Fringe. How about doing something like that, where maybe the main festival, I'm just giving you examples, could happen at a BKC or a Geo Gardens or the likes. And you could have satellites from an open source concept. You could have satellite performances happening all over the city. Every perceivable venue, small or not so small, can be having mini gigs there.
Sure.
Right? But I do believe that is very focused on, can we do a festival that is citywide? So I'm going to pull out a little bit and say, can we adopt a really large purpose that the city needs? And actually make music, the pivot or the reason that we all come together to achieve a way larger goal for the city. And I think that will create resonance way beyond genres and way beyond, bands and how successful or not they are. So I believe there needs to be larger purpose. There needs to be higher ground for anything we do. But to answer your question in one line, imminently possible.
Okay.
It requires believers, and believers will believe if there's objectivity and purpose behind objectivity.
So Abbas, I mean, for something like that, I mean, if again, I'm using a slightly film analogy in terms of a festival. I mean, Bombay is a difficult city to plan a film festival, and it probably will be a difficult city to plan a music festival. But do you think there'd be a great appetite amongst your generation to get in and be part of something like that?
Yeah, definitely. So, like you compared it to Mami. So, a film festival doesn't only premieres one kind of a film, right? So, it's a great opportunity for a platform to showcase a lot different kind of music for everyone, like we discussed. That so, if we concentrate on a very different genres. For example, if I go to a Sunburn, I'll only listen to EDM. If I go to a Mahindra Blues, I'm only listening to jazz and blues. So what if we combine the genres and make like a 2-3 day festival where people can enjoy different kind of music? Then it will definitely work, I'm pretty sure.
Sure.
That requires infrastructure. It requires a huge infrastructure, and like I said, people will deviate. So you won't. It won't be respectful to an artist if you go for if it's EDM and you're a jazz person. It's not respectful for the artist to be there, present at the moment, not enjoy.
So Brian, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? I mean, in India, it seems to be there are millions of people that are huge fans of a lot of these artists, but it's not necessarily on a map.
Yeah.
In terms of a tour. How do we change that?
Yeah. So there are two perspectives though that I'd like to very quickly discuss them. One is, are we trying to create a single concert that people will attend in large numbers and enjoy and take home memories of? Or are we trying to create a sustainable festival, a year-on-year, an annual festival, biannual, whatever it turns out to be? Either which case takes on a slightly different approach. Okay, so if it is a festival that we want to happen year on year, we have to build on larger objectives that go way beyond the band.
Yeah.
We have to you go to the North Sea Jazz Festival for a reason. You go to the New Orleans Jazz and Heritage Festival for a reason. So it doesn't matter, but matters less who is playing at the festival. You're going to have a good time. That's if you're creating sustainability. If it's a one-off, then the band is of extreme essence, and what the following is in India. So I suppose there's two answers, Rahul, to the question.
Sure.
And both work depending on what the purpose is.
Yeah, and then hopefully, I've read about a lot more sort of the popular bands sort of coming to India. So maybe, now with the relaxation of maybe in tax policies and stuff like that, we may start to see some of them coming in. Before we finish, I want to quickly talk about musical shows and stage shows. And obviously, Brian, you've been part of a number of these throughout your career. Most recently, Beauty and the Beast, and of course, Sing India, Sing, which you're currently in at the moment. What is the opportunity that exists there, and what are the problems that we face in terms of becoming a truly sort of musical theatre country or a musical theatre city?
Okay, so the temptation is to kind of use yardsticks like West End and Broadway and compare it, right? Because they have sustainable theatre / musical theatre / engagement opportunities. One of the primary reasons of sustainability there is the fact that it's a very tourist-driven city, London, for example, or New York. I don't know, and I don't think we enjoy that kind of opportunity or privilege here in Mumbai. So one big disadvantage here is that we don't have fresh people coming into the city in droves, or people who can afford and have inclination toward this. That's the first challenge. Having said that, we've got enough and more people in this city.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So one could talk to them, and there are plenty of takers that, visitors that come in temporarily. I think the opportunities are more than the challenges. Blame it on my half full versus half empty. I'm good for that. I think infrastructure, and at this point in time, sustainability. Some of the challenges we face are venues. Some of the challenges we face are taxation. I think there is abundant talent. I think there is really a surfeit of talent. Unfortunately, there aren't enough evident opportunities for that talent, to come forward and indulge in and invest in.
Okay, and on that point of rethinking and evolving, I would like to thank Brian for taking his time and sparing his time for a fascinating chat. My chat thanks to Abbas and Anandita as well for their contributions. I hope you all enjoyed this first discussion podcast that we had. There will be many more from Whistles and Echoes. Keep checking the website for more great written audio and video content, and thank you all very much for listening.